Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Sacred We. This is the place where we get to learn how to use the medium of the relationship itself for our own awakening. You might be thinking to yourself, Mike, that sounds pretty woo-woo. What the hell is awakening? Practically, this means reaching higher levels of health and maturity in our life, being able to navigate and move through complexities. And I think we can all feel where this is true. If we don't do relationship well, it can be the biggest energy suck of our life. It shows up everywhere. We're not present at work. We're not present with ourselves. We're not managing what we need to feed our physiology and our strength and our vitality. And we start to isolate because we feel shame about all those things. But when we're doing relationship well, what I've noticed over the years with the clients that I've worked with the friends in my life, is that's where we feel the most rich. True richness, wealth, freedom inside comes from being connected to ourselves and other people who offer over a safety where we get to belong. And we want you to have that deep felt sense of belonging because it's so juicy, it's so delicious. And we want to give you the pathway, which is the sacred we. In today's episode, you're going to want to make sure you stick through this whole thing because we're taking, on Courtney's side, over 20 years of her experience, over 15 years for me in the coaching. And we're going to highlight the relational patterns and dynamics that we've noticed that lead to feeling lonely, disconnected, crunchy in relationship, and give you the golden key that's going to change that, to bring you into emotional intimacy, safety, where you actually get to experience feeling seen, heard, and understood. So let's dive right into it. I hope you enjoy.
So we live in a culture right now that really emphasizes individual support. And Mike and I are huge proponents of getting individual support, of working on our stuff. A very common thing that we hear from particularly women is he's not doing his work, he's not getting support. And we also see where maybe both people in the partnership are doing a lot of individual work. They're sitting in ceremony, they're doing breath work, they're, working with counselors and therapists, and this is happening. There's a huge movement of this. And Mike and I want to come in, and we have a bit of a disruptive take here. And this is really stemming from, I've been a therapist for almost 20 years, and Mike has been working with couples for how long?
The last 5 years.
5 years. And so what we want to introduce is this idea that if we go get individual support just from individual therapists who aren't trained in holding the relational field, they're not actually trained in relationship work. Studies have shown that what will happen is that support person, that therapist, will actually end up pathologizing the absent partner. They'll end up undermining the relationship, and they will end up pushing the individual towards personal empowerment in ways that erode the we. And I want to share with you my own journey that affirms this, that I know this is true, and I've witnessed it in so many ways. When I started out as a therapist, because you start out, you get your master's and you actually know nothing, and you start working with people. And, it was quite a few years before I actually started getting relational training, but I would still work with couples and I would work with individuals. And, when an individual would come to me and they'd be talking about their partner, well, I'm not seeing their partner. I don't know their partner. The only thing I know about their partner is based on what they're reporting, right? On what they're saying. And I'll tell you, the majority of people, when they come into therapy, because they're usually feeling frustrated in their partnerships, they aren't painting a clear whole picture of their partner because they can't see their partner clearly because right now they're in relational hurt and rupture with their partner. So when they come in, what they're saying about their partner is the majority of it is the hurt from their own childhood, their projections. And then somewhere in there is also the actual hurt that's happening. But I, as a therapist, have no way of knowing what that is, right? And I tell you, I did it so much. I just kept affirming individual empowerment, like, yes, have a boundary. Oh yeah, that sounds really not okay. Yeah, your partner did that? Oh my goodness. Like this, really a lot of affirming, a lot of validating, acknowledgement, all beautiful parts of what counselors and therapists and support people, healers of all kind are trained to do. Validate, really see, right? The thing is that we all come in with these biases. And in that way of just affirming one individual's experience of their relationship is actually separation consciousness and is not actually the sacred we. And so what I kept watching and being super confounded by what I was watching is my desire was to create more love. And every time I worked with an individual or a couple, there would actually be like more separation that would start to happen, or almost like the problems would get bigger. And I was just confounded, and I could feel there's something missing here. There's something missing, even though I'm doing everything that my supervisors and everybody is saying, And then that was mirrored by my own journey of going for individual support and being supported by therapists. Most of them were single and had been divorced and separated, right? I had one therapist who was in a partnership, but it wasn't a happy partnership. There was a lot of struggle. And all of that would come through in how they would support me, It would come through in how they would be really cautious about my partner. If I talked about love or wanting to, extend love or care for my partner, they'd be really cautioning me not to lose my boundaries, or, how to be really clear in my own sovereignty. And, they'd be really reflecting back to me how that really didn't feel good, or that really, and there would sort of be this underlying energy in the field that I had to bolster myself and get more sovereign and more clear in myself and do more of my healing. And the more I was in my own seat, then love would come. Then I would find love. But here's the thing. I was with all of these therapists that hadn't yet found that yet. They weren't actually living it. So the frequency, what I was looking for and needing, wasn't in what they were offering. And in fact, inevitably, it would start to make me doubt my partnership more, move into my own sovereignty, see my partner as not honoring me and not seeing me, and da-da-da-da. Again, I had a voice inside that was like, something's wrong. This isn't leading to more love. This also, by the way, happens in family healing. Very common thing, right? We make all the extended family members bad and wrong, and now there's no sense of we. And then I started to learn about relational work, which is the sacred we, which is what Mike and I hold and teach now and understand deeply, which is the opposite. It's where when we have someone sitting in a chair and we start to work with them, we understand that this isn't an individual in a relational field. We're not just working with this person and who they are and their sovereignty. We're working with them getting to know themselves in a field of relationship. And our job isn't just to hold that person in their sovereignty. Our job is to hold them in their uncovering of their sovereignty while holding their partner, while holding their family field, and understanding it's all a part of that person's well-being. And understanding when that person comes in and talks about their partner, they very likely are going to tell us a triggered, biased, unconscious inner child story. And our job is not to just affirm that story. Our job is to actually invite them to get to know what's happening for them and get to know, but also, and what's happening for your partner, and who's your partner, and how do you care for your partner, and how does your partner meet you in that? And we actually, even if we're working with the individual, we're inviting in the awareness of the relationship. And the first time that I experienced that work with a therapist who was actually holding the sacred we, parts of me that were able to heal that had never healed before, suddenly, instead of relationships separating me from partners and from family, I started to have more connection and more, and also young parts of me that were actually acting out and making a lot of mess. And I was getting affirmed and acknowledged and validated. they started to grow and heal and learn how to make space for more love. And so, we want to dive into this. One of the things we really want to name, and what for me was a huge click because I knew this, but when I heard Stan Tacken talk about this, when he said there is a phenomenon where when you go towards individual therapists who don't know how to hold the relational field, they don't have relational training, it inevitably leads to more and more affirmation of self-empowerment and self-boundaries, and the relationship breaks down, which we just want to make the argument, and I want to hear you, Mike, that inevitably what ends up happening in that is that now we've disempowered the relationship. We've disconnected people from each other, and now we've lost the love. And it's pretty ironic that we live in a culture that keeps telling us, if you go do your individual work and you go do your individual work, then you'll have love. And what we're actually saying is that's not actually the way.
Totally. It makes me think of, one of the first couples I ever supported, and there's an initiation of supporting the first couple as a coach or a therapist. And I've been coaching people for over 15 years. And when we decided to go more directly into supporting couples, because we started to experience so many fruits in our own relationship of having our relationship supported by somebody living what we call sacred relationship, which for anyone new to that term is using the medium of the relationship for our own personal awakening. 15 years of learning the me, for 15 years of personal development, self-empowerment, validating, picking up, lifting up. I was so good at that when I worked with my first couple, even though we were really embodying the sacred we in our relationship, even with that, my conditioning went into this place of really just validating and affirming each partner's feelings and experiences in the relationship. And it was helpful for a couple sessions, and then things got really wobbly, really shaky, and it actually brought up more volatility in the relationship. And a part of me just thought, yeah, that's beautiful. It's healthy. It's all coming to the surface. But there was a place where I was unconsciously unconsciously offering ingredients that were actually advocating for the relationship itself. And I remember at the end of this first container with this couple, I remember sitting there asking myself, that's so interesting. Why did that get so volatile? And it was humbling for me to then rest into, okay, why are Courtney and I doing so well in this place? Oh, right, the sacred we, all these elements. What are those elements? Oh, right, we would never let each other speak this way about each other. We would never. And I started to notice these patterns of, okay, I need more training here. There's something where I'm losing me. I'm losing my seat in it. And this is where we started doing couples work together, and then really immediately, okay, when we're both in the room, we can really hold it. And then that initiated me to wanting to do the couples training with Terry Reel, is one of my mentors. And his whole philosophy is around the us, the we. It's woven into it. And it's an advocacy for the relationship. And when I then worked with my next couple after that, game changer, the report card is, there's more love, there's more safety, there's more connection. And so there's really something to this place where if there isn't somebody who is living and embodying the advocacy for the relationship itself, that third entity, it will fall apart. And there may be some of you out there where you can do just the individual support and your relationship's great. That might be the case. But I'm just speaking through my experience. Every situation that I'm aware of in my world, if there isn't the relationship itself being supported, then the relationship starts to get there starts to be a lot of hurt and a lot of disconnect, and a distance just slowly starts to take up more space in the relationship. And there's a bit of contempt starts to sneak in, and there's this avoidance starts, and then a blaming, and then criticizing, and like, oh, that's so interesting to watch. But what we've watched in the couples that we support in our 2-to-2 containers, when there is a third party always tracking the relationship and interrupting the pattern that goes into separate consciousness, that's the thing that creates the connection. It's the advocacy for the sacred we.
Yeah. And it's been wild for us to watch how couples will come in and they've, some of them have just worked themselves to the bone doing individual work, and thinking, if I just work on myself more, we'll be able to connect. If I just, and it's a misunderstanding in our culture that if I just become the best, absolute best version of me, then we'll relate better, because it's actually relational work itself is its own skill. It's actually its own set of skills, of ways of being that's different than how we're going to hold ourselves if it's just me. Like if I'm just walking around in the world by myself is very different from what I have to do and bring to actually walk through the world relationally. And that's so what people will do is they'll bump into relational issues and they'll go, oh, well, I need to go work on myself more. But then inevitably it doesn't ever lead to working through those parts. And what's so fascinating for me, where it really, I can't tell you how much of a gift it is for me to work with couples, because I always think it's so wild. I'll work with an individual and I'll get to know them and their patterns and I'll think that I have a pretty good sense of what the dynamic is going on between them and their partner. But you know what? We don't actually really know until we have both people in front of us. Really. And then every time we have both people in front of us, I'm like, oh, I see what's happening. But I can't see that until both nervous systems, both people are in front of me, and we're actually watching in real time what the pattern dynamic is. Because if it's just one person, we're still only seeing it through that person's lens and that person's body. And so we're limited in how we can support and really understand what's playing out until both people are there. And, the other really common thing that happens for people is that really deep things get said to them by individual therapists who don't know. And this is what I want to say. I supervise therapists. I have taught many students in therapy. I have taught really masterful therapists. And none of them mean harm. It's literally just that they don't even realize the bias that they're holding and how they keep affirming something that is creating separation. But then when you're really vulnerable and you're maybe having a hard time staying in the love with your partner, they plant these things, right? These messages that can really get between you and your partner. Mike and I have a story where he was getting support from someone, and I could feel that was happening. And I actually had worked with her before too. Beautiful person, helped both of us so much. But there was some sort of pattern that I was tracking when either of us went to have a session with this person who wasn't in a relationship. We would come back and there'd be more distance and more conflict. And
there'd always be a little bit of an anger and a little bit of, yeah, but so-and-so says.
Yes. And a bit of well, I want, which I knew the difference now because we were getting support in a way that we would go get individual support and we'd come back and there was more understanding of each other and more love and more. And I started to notice this and I got so fierce because I felt very protective of our relationship because by this point I understood the kind of harm that I myself unconsciously had caused, for people, which happens, this is part of the journey of healing and, but also just realizing the minute we have somebody outside of our relationship coming in to support either person, if they're not able to hold care and respect for our relationship, no matter how mad and triggered we are at our partner, then it's actually dangerous to the partnership.
I'm going to use an example that really might make sense. I think we can all feel this in some place of ourselves. It would be like going to a homeless person and asking for their coaching on how to manage money. Like it just, if they don't know how to manage money really well, it's going to be really hard for them to help you in that place if that's also what you're trying to learn and figure out. And this is what is so, like, I think in that example, it's so easy. You can think, oh, Mike, of course that makes sense. But then I think that's the question we all need to be asking. Well, why would that be any different with relationship? Like if we're looking for relationship advice, we need somebody that knows all the nooks and the crannies, of what it actually takes to do adult relationship well in a place that has the values of respect, kindness, safety, warmth. Those are the ingredients that allow conflict to happen in a safe way, that it leads to integration and higher levels of maturity. Conflict, we don't want to avoid it and run from it. We need to know how to do it well. But if we're getting support that someone isn't in that arena, it just keeps chipping away at the relationship.
Can I name one of the ones that I've noticed can be some of the advice that someone that's not in relationship would give someone in relationship?
More boundaries.
Yeah, more boundaries, which sometimes we need to have boundaries with connection. Yes. The other one is, I think you guys need to take more space. I can't tell you how many times I've had people come to me and they're struggling, and then they're like, yeah, so we're going to take a month apart, and and you know what? There are rare stories where people have done that, done personal work, then they've come back together and done the relational work, and then they've been able to find their way back together. But if you're in a rupture and you understand what's really going on in the nervous system, now spending a month or two apart is actually a really terrible idea, because you know what's going to happen? You are going to take the rupture energy and the disconnection energy, and you're just going to ground that into your nervous system. You actually want to repair as soon as possible. If you're going to take space like that, you actually want to be in a good place before you take space like that. And that's a very common thing that people are being told, is just take more space. The more, and actually like what we would say from being in a relationship, oh, you're needing more closeness. You're actually needing to co-regulate more. You're needing to come back into safety, is actually the opposite of what they're being told.
I think this is also, to go a layer deeper on this, this is why the dating world is so strong in today's world right now. The content that's released on social media around dating is just completely going viral all the time, because there's so many people that are just taking so much space. They're just living in dating and not in long-term partnerships because they listen to the advice. Oh yeah, you know what? I do need more space, or I need this. And yes, sometimes if there's the attempt to do the work and it's really like there's harm, there's abuse, yes, get out of there. But in those crunchy places, it's like support is the thing that's needed, because what can happen is if you take space, and then let's say now because there's so much space and you're not actually doing relationship and you're not tending the bond, your system might start to wander and look at this woman or this man and start to get curious. But then now you're going to allow procreation hormones to drive the bus. And then with rose-tinted glasses, be like, well, this person, oh, they're so much kinder. They're this, they're that. And you may actually find yourself drawn to another partner who you're filtering through procreation hormones in the beginning stages. That's always more enjoyable in the beginning. But then you might just then follow that train, which I've watched so many couples do this, and so many people that I've worked with, where they do that, but then they just find themselves in the second marriage in the same pattern, and then the third marriage in the same pattern. And then only then the light bulb goes off. Oh my God, this wasn't them. This is my pattern. This is what I keep playing out. Yep. So now we're going to work on that. We're going to turn towards it. And like, now are you ready to learn the sacred we of what it actually requires to build the safety so that all of you gets to be here, but it's not with more space. It's super important to just understand more space isn't the thing that creates more connection. More connection creates connection. It would be like saying, I want to build huge biceps, but I'm not actually going to go to the gym and lift the weights. Relationally, we got to lift the relational weights, which is learning how to turn towards where there's all those crunchy places. And every time we do that and work through patterns together, we create intimacy and we create connection. Oh my God. And then you will want to hang out there more if you learn how to do it well.
Well, and I'm going to name a couple more just examples, and then we'll go into the next point, and a couple other examples of places where I notice when I offer advice, people are like, oh, that's not what other therapists have told me. One is very classic thing that people will get told by therapists that aren't in relationship or don't know how to hold relationship in a healthy way is the person will be like, well, I started going into relationship with this person and then they started playing out their pattern. I don't want to be with someone who's playing out their pattern. And then the therapist's like, yeah, it sounds like they're really going into their material. Like they're not in their adult at all. And you know what I say? We all have patterns. They will play out their material. It's unavoidable. It's not so much about do they go into their patterns. It's more about how do you move through it together. But this is a classic example. There's lots of therapists that all of a sudden the person's pattern comes up because they're human. And then the person's told, oh, obviously they're not, ready for relationship. And then when I'm listening to it, it's like, well, Mike and I have played out those patterns in relationship. That's what you have to move through, right? Like that's part of it.
But the thing to emphasize here, and this is, print this and put it on your wall. You got to go through it to grow through it. You have to actually, like what Courtney and I will do with the couples we work with, what we hold in our relationship is we actually hold each other accountable to turning towards the relationship, no matter what, always, forever and a day.
With really healthy conditions.
With healthy conditions, but learning what the healthy conditions are. Like, hey, when there is an unsafe situation, we're going to create space, but we're not taking a month space. We're taking an hour, a few hours. Let's just bring in the support to learn what's needed to come back together and actually create true connection. Let's put down the words. Let's drop all the ammo or the weapons and the ammo and just actually build and practice connection. And this is what Courtney and I do with couples is we hold the couples to the fire of, hey, we're actually going to reconnect. This is the sacred we. Yep, your body wants to run and bolt, and we're not going to let that happen. And we're going to go as slow as we need to here. And we're going to guide in all the ingredients to stay connected. And then, this is relationship.
Yeah. And then the last one I just want to name too is it's a very common thing that people will come to me and they'll be naming all the awful things that their partner is doing. If I'm not in relationship, if I'm not in the fire and I don't know how to move through those things, I'm hearing those things, I'm thinking, oh, that's terrible, that's awful, because I can have, and of course we know there's exceptions, but I can have a fantasy idea of what relationship is. Instead, when people come to Mike and I and tell us these things, and of course there's exceptions, but I can't tell you how often I'm like, oh yeah, Mike and I too. Oh yeah, Mike does that too. And what starts to happen is they start to realize that a lot of what they're upset and angry about is a part of relationship. And that what's happening isn't the problem. The problem is they're not knowing how to move through what's happening. So they're actually naming things and patterns and dynamics that are very common, that are part of men and women relating or part of two people relating. And because they don't know how to work with it relationally, they're actually making all of those things this huge problem. And when you're relating with other people who are in relationship, and this is what happened for us too, right? When we started to get support from a couple, is normalizing of like, that's it. That's the journey. You're like, I remember the first time Clara said to us, you're doing it. This is it. And we're like, what? And she's like, yeah. And we're like, whoa, this feels kind of crunchy.
Yeah, but we're hurt and I'm hurt. And
yeah.
She did this and
yeah,
great.
It.
You guys are, and you're here.
You're spiraling through it. And it was like, it was like this huge, I've thought that sacred relationship was something like, And that's what I watch again and again, is where we're help people shift into, oh, I've been pathologizing all these things in my relationship, but it's actually just that I don't know how to move through them. And that's a common one. So, okay, so how does the sacred we reconnect?
Makes me think, the first time I heard this from a neuroscientist, I actually think the first person I heard this from was Bruce Lipton. And when he said this phrase, it just clicked inside of me. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Like, oh, that makes so much sense. So if I'm feeding a certain thought or belief over and over, I'm just reaffirming that thing over and over and over. And why I love that phrase is it really helps me actually leverage that same principle that's true. It's just it's a truth in existence, that hearts that fire together, wire together. Nervous systems that fire together, wire together. When I get individual support, if I'm not inside myself, like this has taken me years to boundary. Like when we want to talk about what a healthy boundary looks like, I'm going to explain it. When I go to get support, that's my individual support, because I do get individual support. I'm holding a boundary within myself that's advocating for the soul of Courtney and I's relationship. And I actually won't bring my relational pieces that's about Courtney and I's relationship to the support. I bring my relationship to my past and my history that's about my relationship to my two adoptions and my childhood. That's what I get support on in the one-to-one. Because if my support system isn't in a sacred relationship, I know, and I've experienced it so many times that it's palpable in my body, I'm going to hurt myself and the little guy inside of me, but I'm also going to hurt our relationship because I'm going to get feedback that is being fed from separate consciousness. It's just what we do. It's unconscious. Because if somebody's living in individual consciousness, those are the neurons that are firing, that's creating a reality. So if I want Courtney and if I want you and I to live a thriving relationship, I have to boundary that inside of myself to make sure, not just with my support, but the people in my life. Am I going to get relational advice from somebody who's not fully in the practice of it? No, I'm going to boundary inside. Mike, we're not going to talk about that because I'm going to get feedback that'll hit certain neurons in my own brain that will then fire and wire to separate consciousness. That's me not serving the relationship. And to make this more practical, if I get individual support and feedback and a part of me that's already feeling separate inside and hurt by you, and then I get affirmed in it, it's going to groove that experience inside of me and validate it. And I'm going to come back in, and I know because it's happened so many times, I'm going to come back into our home and I'm going to be pissed at you and I'm going to be hurt by you. And I'm going to be scanning for all the evidence of where that place you hurt me so true. And I'm actually distancing myself from you instead of turning towards each other. Now, how the sacred we creates reconnection, and this is what I've watched because I support high functioning men one-to-one. I'm always attuning to the relationship, even if the partner's not in the room. And so when I'm supporting the person, I'm firing and wiring the neurons in my brain that is living the sacred we. And I'm always giving feedback from we. I'm never coming back with one-to-one feedback when I'm supporting a client because I know it's actually not going to bring them to their desired intention, which is connection. It's always advocating for the we. So the sacred we, the reason it's so helpful is it's the highest level of relational consciousness. We've got first stage, is me consciousness. Then we have you, me consciousness, and then we consciousness. When we fire and wire these neurons of connection, we start to move towards connection.
Yeah. And this is something that we're culturally having to rewire. And this is why we're feeling fierce about it, because we live in an avoidant culture, right? There's lots of cultures. We have a client who is Filipino, and when he describes his childhood, is like so we consciousness, right? It's like everyone's in the we, and that's a part of it. And another client of ours that is Indian, And, she described all the aunties and everyone's making all the food, and it's very we consciousness. In our culture, we are not practiced in the we consciousness in Western white, European descendant culture. And so it's really affecting our relationships. And there's this healing we have to do as a culture to start to think that way. But, one of the things Mike and I have definitely smacked face first into is it can also trigger people like, therapists where we're embodying the we consciousness and the therapist getting triggered because they're not in relationship and they're feeling how much we're prioritizing each other, or, because the thing is, and Mike and I have been on stages and had so many people get triggered because it can trigger the fear of codependency, right? Because if people haven't leaned into that we space enough yet, and they're still in some of those other consciousnesses of the you, me, or maybe they don't know how to do it yet, they don't know themselves enough yet without losing themselves, they can project that if we're in that we, that we're codependent. But interdependence is not codependence.
And to add a layer to that, if I can, is the intimacy and the vulnerability. So when we're witnessed in vulnerability and intimacy, it can trigger the projection of, oh, that's codependent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because interdependence, when we haven't done it, when we didn't have it, when that might feel really scary. And in our culture, that is for many people, but we have watched again and again that the people that are afraid of that come in here and do couples work with us, and it transforms them and it changes them. And suddenly they're able to learn how to be in the world in a new way. So the number one question to ask yourself.
If you're still listening to this and there's so much resonance and you got light bulbs going off, first of all, go capture those, write them down, write some notes on this. What are these ahas that are that you're happening?
Write it in the comments.
That you're having right now. Write it in the comments. Let us feel you. That helps it integrate. Neurons that fire together, wire together. So fire those neurons about these breakthroughs. But then the question we want to ask ourselves, if you're out there, is this simple orientation that's going to give you an honest report card. The one-to-one support that you do have, when you go to that one-to-one support, is it leading to more actual feelings of connection in your life, and especially with your partner? If so, amazing. Great. Keep working with that person. And my guess would be, I would almost bet money that they're in a relationship.
Or they've studied it somehow, or that
they're really in the full buy-in and tending that relational space while supporting. That would be my bet. But then also, it's not just your one-to-one supports. Every relationship you have in your life, the content that you're taking in, shows that you're watching. The question you got to be asking yourself is, the information that you are allowing into your consciousness, is it wiring the sacred we? Is it wiring that it is healthy and appropriate to be advocating for connection in the we space? If so, great. But if it's not, we want to start to bring in boundary to that, because that's going to inform how you experience your relationship and what you end up projecting, not just on your partner, but other people. So what I would really encourage is be real with yourself. Give yourself time and space to do this. Sit down with a journal and write down all the people that you spend a lot of time with, and ask yourself, you can do 2 columns here. Are they single, or are they in connection? And when you're relating with them, do they advocate for we, or is there a lot of like, yeah, you know what? You should get rid of them. No judgment.
Can I describe what the feeling can be too? There can be this feeling when somebody doesn't yet know in their body the journey of relationship, that, almost a bit of like, people don't know how to embody healthy relationship, and there's like a boundary to that, and sort of a holding a torch for something that's more perfect or more evolved, but they haven't experienced it yet. So then there's just kind of always this feeling in the room that there's something out of reach. There's something that it would be the better way, but it's out of reach. It's not here. It's kind of like, and what is here is not okay. And so there's this kind of energy in the field.
Yeah, totally. I'm glad you're adding that. And the filter is so simply, are the connections that you have, like the connections that you have, the support that you have, is it leading to more connection and feelings of belonging in your life? Is it, if so, keep double downing on those. But then if not, time to be honest with yourself and start to get curious where you can start to move towards relationships or supports where that starts to become an experience to set yourself free. Because if you are in crunch, if you are in repeated patterns and it's just so painful, often the simplest solution is moving towards somebody who, our language here is advocating for the sacred we.
Yeah, and these would be people that either they have training in that, right? They've done training and gone into that and worked on that in themselves, or they're living it in relationship in a big way. Sometimes there are people, that are doing a lot of intimacy work, with friendships and in this way, and they can understand it too. And we want to be looking for that. We want to be looking for that. When I walk in a space and I'm looking for support, I'm asking the person not only to hold me in my sovereignty, but to hold that I'm a mother, to hold my son, to hold that I'm a partner, to hold that I'm a daughter, to hold that and to understand that I'm all of that, and that they're actually the well-being is to hold me in all of that. And the thing we want to say is, we know in neurobiology that the healthiest brains, the brains that are the most developed, are the brains that have this capacity. And we're not saying anyone's better or worse based on that. It's just that what I am saying is the beautiful human brain, when it gets to wire properly, it wants to hold this. This is what it's designed to do, because in the wild, it would increase our survival if we can hold it. That when I'm out there, yes, I'm keeping Courtney alive, but I'm actually here for the whole village. And that actually increased our survival. That's why we're here. And that also was the thing that made us so beautifully able to evolve. And so it's just a really good barometer of where are we at in our journey, in our own capacity to be in that sacred we. And then with our supports, where are they at in that capacity? And bringing in boundary, boundary of what kinds of supports you want to have in your field.
Yeah, and there's a cautionary I want to add here, because you might listen to this episode and maybe you're having all these insights and ahas. And then my one piece of advice here is not then going out into your life and pushing away anyone that's just in the me or they are single. It's not at all what we're saying. Because in those situations, and this is what I've really loved to do in my life and with my friends that are single, but I still want to bring my relationship with Courtney into those connections and conversations, I teach them how to love me. I teach them how to be in advocacy for the relationship. And I've had specific conversations, and this is what you can do with your friends, is you can say, hey, God, I really want to deepen in our relationship and I want to be more open and share these things, but I just can, is it okay that I share something that would be really helpful to me and really helpful for, me and my partner? I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll be like, hey, so I just noticed what can happen sometimes is in the past, I just want to bring this part of me that's feeling hurt by Courtney and I just want to be able to share the hurt, but I don't want it fixed. I don't need it validated in like, oh yeah, her.
She's the worst.
Yeah, what I'm needing from you is to really hold us both in love. And if anything, remind me of the love of us both and really bring in Courtney. And I have one of my closest friends actually, has been single quite a bit in the last, year. And whenever I come and bring the vulnerable part, that's a safe place because he really heard me, and I'll talk about our relationship and he'll be like, oh, I just want you to know I'm sitting here really just feeling so much love for Courtney in this too. Oh, like you guys are you care about each other so much. And then every time I get that, I'm like, oh, I'm relieved because I still get to be human and share that unevolved part that's like, screw Courtney. She really pisses me off because she said this. And like, that's the worst thing you could say to me. Doesn't she know I'm adopted? Like, and then that little kid in me, but then it's like, I just get to say it, get it out. And then I return back to my adult brain because I was able to get it out. I'm not repressing it because I was able to teach, this is how I want it to be held. And then being held in it is so helpful, and it's healing, not just for me, but then the other person that I notice, it starts to inform them, oh, this is what's needed. Advocacy for the we.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if any of you are out there thinking, I'll just keep going to the bottomless pit of my personal patterns and then my relationship will transform. Or if any of you are out there thinking, well, if he would just go work on himself, then our relationship would get better. Or if any of you are thinking after your therapy sessions and your healing sessions and I'm in the worst relationship ever. I am better than him. And you know what? It is all his stuff, or it is all her stuff. These could be warning signs. And I'm saying this in a playful way, not to be shaming or anything, just to bring some levity to we're all learning and we're all human and we're finding our way. But if you raise your hand to any of that, the invitation would be to get curious about what would it mean to actually do the relational work, the relational sacred we work, and it's different. And have you done it? Have you focused on that yet? Has that been a focus of your work together? And are you ready?
Yeah. And if you're someone out there where there's so much landing and hitting, this is what Courtney and I do. And it doesn't need to be us. What we really encourage is find somewhere that's doing the relational sacred we work and go towards it, whoever that is. And if you feel the safety, if you feel the resonance with us, we do 2-to-2 couples containers, and this is where we get to hold this with you. We build the container around your relationship. Both of you, yes, will be there, and we will start to weave through these patterns in a way that's going to save you years of pain and anguish doing it the other way, which is deepening the groove with only getting the one-to-one work.
And, you can also hop on our mailing list. We'll have a link in the notes to get 3 sacred somatic practices that you and your partner could start working on and practicing with together. Get on our mailing list. We're going to be offering some webinars and deep dives coming up soon. And if you enjoyed this, please give us a 5-star. And we'd love it if you could forward this on to someone that maybe doesn't know about us yet.
Yeah. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thanks.